Hey everyone, welcome to day one of the Online Safety Challenge for Parents. I'm so glad that you're here, and let's just dive in to the very first day, which is pretty foundational. So we're going to talk today about keeping open lines of communication with your kids, and specifically open lines of communication about technology. So the single most important factor in keeping kids out of trouble online is communication with parents. I hear that over and over and over again. That the ability for them to know that they can go to their parents, the ability for us to be able to ask them questions about what they're doing online, that open line of communication is key to keeping them out of trouble, to making sure that they're making good choices, that when they do encounter, because they will, when they do encounter something online that they know is wrong or they know is questionable, they know to come to us. So that is key. So before we get into all of the filtering stuff and all the parental control stuff that we can set to keep our kids safer, let's just make sure that we've got the foundation set, and that is that we are keeping open lines of communication with our kids. So you may already have pretty good communication with your kids, and I commend you for that. I have one of mine that I have pretty good communication with my teenager. The other one's a bit of a struggle, but you may already have a really open kind of open door policy with your kids. You talk about everything. They're really receptive to you. You may have younger kids, and they tend to be a little bit more open to what mom and dad have to say. So that's awesome. And so you're going to build on that, because the question that I have next is, so how is your conversation about technology with them? So we may be open about a lot of things, and we may have really good kind of just established lines of communication on a lot of different things. But when it comes to technology, I have found that parents often feel more reluctant to talk about technology with their kids because they feel like they don't know enough. They feel like their own knowledge about technology is lacking, and their kids know so much more than they do. And so they don't feel like they can talk about technology as freely as they can other things. I've known parents that they can talk openly and freely about sex with their kids, but when it comes to technology, they're just not so sure. And so that's perfectly normal. It's perfectly understandable, because for most of us, we didn't grow up with technology. We didn't have these kinds of tools and this social media when we were kids. So we don't have a whole lot to base, um, you know, daily living in a digital world. That came later for us. For them, they're immersed in it. So parents often feel that reluctancy to talk about technology as openly as they do other things. So that's one of my challenges to you is, if you've kind of been in that position, capitalize on that open conversation that you have with your kids about everything else, but now you're going to infuse technology in it, and you're going to do it confidently. So let's look at what that looks like. This may have led to putting certain things off, and not talking about certain things, not asking them certain things, because you're a little uncertain about even maybe the language to use when you're asking about technology. You haven't asked them questions that you know that you should ask. Maybe you haven't set limits or established parameters, because you're not exactly sure what those should look like. So opening up the lines of communication looks different depending on the age of your kids and what you've talked about already with them. So let's just try to break this down. I know that some of you have younger kids. Some of you, like me, have teenagers. Some of you are feeling that sort of like, have I lost them? Is it too late to do anything with them? So let's just kind of break this down. I'm going to give you a couple of things to think about with different ages. So if you have littles, if you have school age kids, elementary, we're talking now, not even preteen or tweens as we call them. So you've got the littles with you. First of all, I envy you, because you get to establish some patterns and some parameters and some values into them early on before they even get their claws into social media and some of the other things that potentially could get them into trouble. So take advantage of that. If you have little ones, your conversation really is about just being a good person, about being kind, about the language that they use to one another. And that's in the real world, because you're going to then use that and you're going to translate that into an online world for them. So with them, you are you're establishing, that stranger danger in the real world, and you're going to translate that for them and what that looks like in the digital world. So you're focusing on those good principles that you want them to have in an offline environment, and always thinking about how you can apply that, looking for teachable moments to to translate that into a digital world. So with those little ones, that's the kind of thing that you're looking at. You might have some hard and fast rules. We're going to talk about rules and expectations later on in the challenge, but you may have some hard and fast rules, like never talk to strangers online, never talk to anybody that you don't know online, or no devices in the bedrooms. Those kinds of sort of like non-negotiables. It's okay to have those. And this is a good time to start applying a few of those key house rules or non-negotiables now. If you have older ones, if you have tweens, middle school, if you have young teenagers, and you already have a pretty good communication with them, maybe you've even talked about some technology with them, and you're willing to talk with them. So now's the time to keep that conversation going, to make sure that there's, on a regular basis, that you're talking with them about their tech, what they're finding, what games they're playing, if they're in chat rooms, what are the kids talking about. Now, the delicate part here is that this is the age where they start to push back against anything smacking of parental control, right? So you need to do this in a very non-judgmental way. So you're not coming at them like, what are you doing online? You can't come at them very aggressively. So the idea is take that open line of communication and keep it going. And just ask them out of genuine curiosity. And this is a good time to just come clean and say, I don't know all this stuff. Like, this is new to me because we didn't have this when I was a kid. And you can even talk about the silly games that you played when you were a kid or whatever. It's like, you should see Oregon Trail. Okay, sorry, diversion. So come at them very non-judgmentally, and ask out of genuine curiosity. Hey, I'm wondering, I heard about this thing called Roblox. Have you ever played that? I've heard about this Fortnite. Do you play that, or do your friends play it? And start asking them just out of a genuine desire to know and to learn, and let them teach you. I mean, kids love teaching adults. So this is an opportunity to have that kind of back and forth, where you need a little information just to make sure that they're making some good choices online. They need to know that they're not going to be like hammered every time they open up about technology. You need to keep those lines open. So that's for your tweens and teens that you may already have been talking to. Now, the hardest one is if you have older ones and you really have just sort of let them go. And please do not feel ashamed of that. That's totally normal. You don't know what to say. You don't know the technology. You don't understand the social media that they're on. It's moving so fast. Like, that's the last thing you want to try to keep up with. And so you've kind of let them go, and they've kind of had free reign, and they've had their devices. Maybe they have smartphones. They just have been kind of doing whatever they want. And you try to pull the reins in every once in a while, like, hey, get off your phone every once in a while. But that's about as far as it goes. This is a tougher conversation to have. The best thing to do is to just, again, come clean with them and say, look, I haven't asked you a lot of questions about tech and your device and what you're doing, because this isn't my world, and I don't know very much about it. I want to know more. I also want to make sure that you're safe. And a good way to come at this, not just for this age group, but for any age group, a good approach to this, this has worked well with my 13-year-old. A good approach to this is, instead of implying that you don't trust them, make sure it's clear to them that it's the rest of the world that you don't trust. That device is giving them access to the entire world. And there's a good portion of that world that you don't trust, that they want to do harm to people, especially children, that they want to exploit people, that they want to get them to buy things they don't need, whatever it may be, however harsh you want to, take that stance. Make sure that they know that you are more, that you're trusting them, but you don't trust the rest of the world. And so because of that, you want to make sure that they're safe. And they may come back with, look, I know, don't share your passwords. I know, don't talk to strangers online. But you really need to just keep gently pushing that and having those hard conversations. So it might be asking them about what they're doing online. It might be asking them about this game that they're playing. Is there a chat room, and who are you chatting with online, and what is the nature of that conversation? It might be, hey, you're posting a lot of pictures online. Have you thought about what that might mean? Have you thought about the implications of that? Have you, we need to be their prefrontal cortex and think ahead a few years, because they're probably not thinking, beyond the end of their fingertips. So we need to ask those questions. We need to have those hard conversations. So that part is not easy if you're in that situation. And I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of in that situation with one of my kids right now. So I feel your pain. It is some hard conversations to have, where you feel like, hey, you've let me go for years now, and now suddenly you're coming down on me and you're asking me all these questions. So it definitely is an art to try to break through those walls gently, to not be judgmental, and to come from a place of genuine curiosity. And I want to learn this. Another good way to approach this is to remind them that, look, technology really well. You're immersed in all this stuff, and I want to learn from you. But here's the thing. I have a lot more life experience than you do. And I've lived dealing with people, dealing with bad people, dealing with heartbreak, dealing with like all these life things that you haven't. And I think we have something that we can offer to each other, because I can show you some of that stuff and how it applies to the digital world, and you can show me some of your digital life. So it's a give and take. And I think a lot of teens will be more receptive to that. So again, hard conversations, but they need to be had. And that is your action step for today. What hard conversation do you need to have with your kids? How can you open those lines of communication up? You probably have a pretty good idea, even in listening to this, and even before this, you have a good sense as a parent of that one spot, or that one aspect that, like, you have not broached, you have not talked about that, and you really do need to ask them that question, or you need to start talking about that aspect of digital communication, or digital life and digital citizenship. What is that hard conversation? That's your action step, is to identify it and then commit to having that at some point in the near future. But at least identify it now, and you'll be able to then move forward as we continue through this challenge. So tomorrow's challenge is going to be about 3 levels of parental control, and we'll start getting a little bit more into the nitty-gritty as we go on here. But for right now, think about that action step. I encourage you to jump over into the Facebook group and post. There will be a post there for day 1, and you can add to the thread. Maybe you'll be the first to post what your action step is. And again, it's that, what hard conversation do you need to have with your child or children about their digital life? So I look forward to hearing you and seeing you in the forum, and we'll see you tomorrow with day 2 of the challenge on the 3 levels of parental controls. Until then, take care, everyone.